Hello everyone, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have some fun and we are going to start, or I'm going to show you how I am going to be creating my fantasy map for my new project, Project Grey. This is going to look terrible, but we're going to have fun. And we want to put as much fun into the writing process as we possibly can. Why a fantasy map? You don't particularly need one if you are creating your own world or if you're doing a high fantasy. I know a lot of people, a lot of readers find having a map quite handy so they can sort of see in real time where the characters are traveling. It gives you sort of a better image in your head of what the place actually looks like. And it's just generally a fun thing to do and a fun thing to sort of put down on paper, sort of what you have in your head. For someone who struggles with timelines and how long people are spending crossing certain places and forgetting where they have been in regards to where they have just come from, having the visual is certainly going to assist me. Is there a specific ADHD way that I do this? The only ADHD specific way is taking it too far. Apart from that, you can do it any way that you like. Have I already made a fantasy map for this world? Yes. Have I misplaced it? Yes, very, very long time ago. Which is why we are redoing it today and taking it the little step further that I don't need to take it, but I'm inevitably going to anyway. My face is going to disappear for most of this video, but you will still get my lovely British babble in the background as I show you in real time, and also some time lapse because we don't have all that time in the world, the steps I'm taking to create such map, and then discuss the steps I will further take creating this map because I'm not sticking it all in one video. My brain won't let me focus on it for that long. Okay, so for this we're going to need some rice or some pasta, whichever you happen to have on hand, a pen and a pencil with a rubber as well. I'm choosing to use rice because I just want that little bit of extra detail in what I'm doing, but anything you have to hand that sort of is loose and can make some fun shapes will do. Now, hopefully I do not make a mess doing this, but the first thing we're going to do is take your rice or your pasta and just dump it onto the page. I had way too much rice in that, and you just want to start pushing it around, giving it a little shake until you have sort of formed any type of shape that you think looks a little bit decent. Yep, I am happy with that. There are a few things I know that I'm going to 100% need for this, so I'm going to add those myself. And then all you want to do is draw around what you have spilled, because we know that any sort of coastline for any country is not just straight lines or anything like that. It is a series of bumps, indents, things that stick out quite a bit. And with rice, you can go in and out of all of those little things there. That was a little bit there. So if I do that, I can turn that into a tiny little island. And this way, you can get a really interesting spinning that piece of rice around, really interesting shape of a country. And again, we're just gonna go around sort of like the small islands that are just off the coast of Scotland. And then you could even go a step further if you really wanted to, especially with the rice. I've got so many little dips where I've just stuck my hand. You can just, I mean, I don't know if it will work well with what I have planned, but oh look, there are a couple of lakes there. Fantastic. Again, that's something I can alter as I go. I don't know if, depending on where my countries lie, I will actually need lakes there. And then I do know that somewhere around here I'm gonna have to make up a little bit of how I know 100% that tiny little piece goes, because I'm going to need that for my plot, or at least for the build up for the country itself. If I'm missing any small pieces, oh no, twisting it around again. And then what should happen is, when you very carefully, because you do not want to make a mess, but I probably will anyway because I used so much rice. I'm scared. You should be left with a very basic outline of a country, which looks very square to me personally. Isn't a massive issue, but what you can do now is go around and 100% decide on where anything else happens to be, or change any little bits that you want. So I know from the top of my head, when I try to remember the shape of the country that I have in my actual head, I know that this area here wasn't so fat. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of rice, just because I want that sort of outline. And I think roughly around here as well, it was not so fat. And then maybe a little bit here, just to come inwards slightly. So I'm just going to take the rice and just sort of again push it into some sort of shape that we want, and then with a lovely little, just gonna go around that like this. If I get rid of these, and then we'll just rub out what I don't need. So we'll get rid of that original line there. We'll get rid of this bit of the coast here, and we'll get rid of this bit here. And I think that sort of forms a bit more of a dynamic shape than it just being all sort of mostly one square. And obviously we've got little bits that we can improve upon as we go round with the pen to make the decent outline, but we have a very good starting point for the country itself. And then what you want to do, if you're happy with the shape that you have, in which, if I just map out in my head, just here, I will make it work. I'll make it work, because we're just gonna pick a starting point, Sarah, seriously. We're just gonna go around There we have the country of Isidona. Very wobbly, very basic, but that is only step one in creating the country itself. Next step is to fill it in with the countries. Just going to get rid of a few of these marks here, and then bear with me 1 second while I make a copy. Do I need to make a copy? I don't necessarily, but I sort of ish know what I like. That is a very terrible copy, but there we go. I sort of ish know what I like. So as long as I've got like a sort of vague, oh, I don't like that. I have to try that again. Oh, it's on there. It just didn't print nicely. Okay, so as long as I have sort of like a spare version, it's fine. So we're going to keep this as the main. We're going to use the spare. And the reason I'm going to use a spare is so I can do all of my work and make all of my decisions on this one and then transfer it over to my actual piece that I want. As long as I have it the right way round and I sort of have everything that I need in all of the places. I forgot what way round this map was supposed to be now. Oh no! That bit there was at the top because I remember almost making a mistake with that. So it is orientated the correct way round. And then we want to mark out where we want all of the countries to go. And the reason I'm doing countries first as opposed to mountains, rivers, or, you know, altitudes or things like that is because I need specific things in specific places. So I would rather have that in the specific place it needs to be before I decide where everything goes. I've made this slightly harder for myself now in order to split this up into how I want it in regards to two of the queendoms, which are within and behind the eastern and western mountains. So, so what do I do about that, Sarah? I don't know where everything's supposed to go now. But it just means I get to think outside the box. So, and this is where actually knowledge of how and where mountains form would be quite helpful, because then I could decide where everything goes. So what we could do is start on the opposite end because that's slightly easier. So if we, and we'll just do this very basically for now. If we take all of this along here, like so, and we'll make this queendom number 1. I know that Faldone, which is the river kingdom, spans more or less entirely across the bottom of the country, but then we also have Meerden, you know, I sort of have made it really difficult for myself, haven't I? Okay, that's fine. So if we come up here and we'll go down here and we'll give them the bottom end of this as well. If we come up here, and this can be number 2. I don't need to worry about size for everything. That is what I sort of need to remember in my head. Now we can come through here and down. This can be number 3. And then Caerphilly is going to be the biggest queendom because that's what they're like. So we'll come all the way across and down here, and this can be number 3. And then the last 2 that we have are Alorian and, so if we I'm trying to think plot-wise. To go to Ophelia, they need to come up into Alorian to get to London. Alright, so if we span across here, and we'll make this, why have I got 3 twice? 4, 5 and 6, and we sort of split everything up that way. This gives them a bit of a bigger queendom than Ophelia. So if we bring this down and come up there, so that makes the main queendom slightly bigger than the rest. And then what I need to do, very, very importantly, is very quickly sketch in. So there will be mountains along here. There are mountains along here to start. And then if I quickly just... Okay, I think I worked it out, so I'm going to draw on my old map, and then we'll transfer onto the actual map once we are done. Okay, so now that we've done that, we get to come to the fun part, in which I am going to use my actual bit for this, just because it is necessary for how I'm going to draw everything. So once I've got my initial outline of the country and all of the different queendoms themselves, the next thing I'm going to put in is mostly plot based, unless they're absolutely massive: mountains, lakes, forests and rivers. So I'm going to very carefully just get rid of that little line there, because across here, and do not say anything about how I am drawing these mountains, thank you very much. It is going to be absolutely terrible. But we have a nice mountain range going from the north to the south of the country here. Then we're just gonna sort of draw the line back in for the actual border. So this is going to be like the biggest mountain range in the country, and that just goes all the way across like that. And then behind this mountain range we have the country of Kirdesh, which is a desert country. There we go. Very terrible, but you sort of, just going to bring that down there a little bit, sort of get the gist, right? I think what we'll need is a little break in the mountain range here. I don't know how to make it a little break in the mountain range, to be fair, but it can sort of go a little bit down and up, because we will need a path to get into the country from the country next to it, which is the country of Mirden. And then up here we have another mountain scape, but there's a point with my mountain scape where roughly around here I think we have a very large lake, and then this mountain range sort of lives around it like so. That comes down there. Again, don't come for me for these awful bits that are the mountains that I have, because they are 100% terribly awful. think if I don't have mountains there, and I'll just make this one here the last mountain, and then that can sort of come back up that way a little bit, and then that can just be mainland, grassland, whatever we need it to be. So those are the main mountains that we have. What I'm going to do is do a double line here between these two queendoms, because this queendom here, Alorian, is higher than this one here, sort of like on a plateau, and then roughly around here we're going to have a waterfall that comes down into that country. So that's all sort of a little bit on a higher level, but not quite a cliff. And then we're going to need a large lake here, and then we're going to need, and this is obviously based on plots, rivers. So we're going to have one river that comes down to from the mountains, and then there'll be like another river going up to the mountain, to the lake, down to the waterfall, where there's going to be like another little, and then we're going to have winding river somewhere along here, I guess, to this lake, and then from this lake we can wind it back around, and that will come out to sea like so. I'm also going to need another river that cuts through from these mountains, that just comes down, winding itself around, and I feel like this is going to be a rather large river that comes down here like so. And it can be very easy to sort of figure out from there any sort of hills or anything that we could have in all of these countries based on that. And then if I think to myself, here in this country, come down to this one, and I'll think logistics for everything as we go. But that is essentially everything that I would need to do for a fantasy map. What I will do at some point is I will draw a bigger version of each of these separate countries onto its own piece of paper, so then I can start drawing in things like counties and things like that. If I do this, these little hoopies are basically sort of like, oh, these are hills in the country, and sort of the rivers are winding around the hills. Because then, not that it's an important plot point per se, but part of the architecture of this country in particular is they do have a lot of houses on the cliff sides of the rivers, so we'll need some sort of hills there as well, just to sort of make everything like that work a little bit better. This is detail that I don't tend to put in any of my maps, but again, because it's sort of plot reasons, they are going to be added just a little bit to make it more obvious in my head why things are the way they are supposed to be in the story. So obviously that would be a little bit of a higher land than the rest of the land. Here would probably be a little bit higher than the rest of the land as well, as we go up to the mountains. Probably some hills or something around here. The map can contain as much or as little detail as you want. Hence why it's fantastic for ADHD because I get to play about and I get to sort of be creative. Not too creative, because I do sort of want everything to be realistic in a real world sense, because obviously you don't want people going, why does that river flow from one side of the country in the mountains all the way across the country and up to the other side of the mountains? Because that is something that does not make sense, which was something that was in the original plan for this. Okay, I know, I did it years ago. So it does need to have some sort of realism, but the amount of detail you would put into it going forward doesn't need to be this detailed at all whatsoever. You could just have the lines for your country, for your borders. You could put in just a few mountains or rivers, and then you could go about and be like, right, so that there is my capital city for this queendom. This is where the capital city is for this queendom, and so, such and such. And the reason I'm going to separate each of the different countries onto their own piece of paper is specifically so I can chart their journey. And it's also why I'm making sure I have a second copy. So I'll have one copy which is just what the map looks like. I'll have a second copy where I can, with counties and necessary bits in, where I can sort of chart, they go down here, then they're here, and then they sort of go along this way, they go up to here, then they'll cut all the way back across, they'll come up here, visit here, go down here, in different colours for books 1, 2 and 3, so I can see their basic journey throughout the entire country, throughout the entire books. And then we'll get specific with the countries, and that's where I can start adding more detail. This is this location, this is this location for chapter 7, this is where they're heading through in chapter 9. So I can sort of make sure I maintain continuity throughout everything, and that I can sort of, not that I know how big this country is, but I can sort of pick, say how many miles each country is across, depending on how I want to work out. Different centimetre is 10 metres, is 10 miles or something like that. And that should also help me stick with more of a timeline in regards to, right, so they've gone from here to here, how long is that distance and how long would it take them to travel that distance, and make it realistic that way. They're going down this entire river, okay, so how long would that river end up being? How fast could they travel on a boat? How many days would that take them to reach here and here? And so on and so forth. And again, it's a lovely visual representation. Not that this looks lovely at the moment, of course. It's visual representation of the world in which your story is set, and also a great tool if you choose to use it in that way, of course, for continuity, for plotting outlines and timelines. And here we have, it looks like a mess, and it's surrounded by rubber shavings, but here is my, at the moment, as much detail as I possibly would need in it at this moment, map of Isidona, which is the fantasy map for my new Project Grey. So we have our 4, 5, 6 main queendoms that we have. We've got the mountains here and here, and I've put just a few more dotted around badly, but dotted around. We've got some forests, which are these weird cloud looking things that we have going on. We've got our rivers, waterfall is there, and just these little bits here which just sort of signify these are hills. Again, they're plot specific reasons. I didn't need to go into this much detail in this bottom country. We don't need all of that information, but once I sort of have a bigger plan for all of the rest of the queendoms, this is sort of what I want it-ish to look like. Any main rivers or lakes, and then any sort of mini-ish rivers sort of coming off of the big one, and then we'll put in a few extra forests, and then I will get to the point as well where I'll add in all of the different counties if it is necessary for all of those queendoms, and then get to the individuals. It does look like an absolute mess at the moment, but it is there for me to use and to know where everything is, and so that is what it will be. I'm happy with how it looks at the moment, mess and all. Probably 100% look at this map in a couple of days and be like, oh my god, that is so ugly, let me try again, which isn't much of an issue. Like, I think it looks okay now. That might change, but that's me wanting it to be done and to be perfect and done, even though I know in my head it doesn't actually need to be perfect, which is why I did all of the scans for all of the steps in the first place, so I have that backup should I need it. And having those scans is also going to help when I start doing the queendom specific pages in regards to adding the detail, the landmarks, and all of those things as well that I am definitely going to need for the future. Because I think having all of the landmarks and names and places on a map is going to be a lot more fun to look at, rather than having it just as a list and my head is trying to figure out where this is all taking place. I might practice different styles of drawing mountains and rivers and forests and things like that until I can do them nice enough for me to be like, that looks really pretty. Just so it looks really pretty. I don't need to do that. I might do that though. I might. I'm probably going to. Till I get bored and leave it as is. So that is everything from me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next step I get to take in my project creation is characters. So I'm very much looking forward to going through all 34 pages of my Google Doc to pull out every single piece of information that I have already got and created for my characters, and then putting them onto the lovely little sheets and digging a little deeper and giving them all a little bit more depth and context. That is going to be a lot of hard work, but hopefully it's going to be a lot of fun hard work, and I can't wait to show you what I've done. Let me know in the comments if you've made your own fantasy map before. Do you have any tips or tricks that you would like to share? And I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.